So today we have Brian Hensley back in studio, and Brian, we've been talking the last couple months, last couple weeks, that is, about some of the things that you and your wife Sarah do at Intego Financial, and last week it was a lot about succession planning and just getting that first step started with that conversation and why that's so important.
Yeah, that starting the conversation is vital. I mean, we don't know a lot of times what other people are thinking until we ask. And so we've got to start that conversation. We've got to think about what we want ourselves. We've got to get the spouse involved. What are they thinking? Do we really know what they want long term? And then, of course, there's those pesky kids that are often involved. So what do they want? What do the off-farm kids want? There's just a lot of conversations that have to take place, and we can't assume we know the answers.
And, especially if, maybe you have that dynamic where your kids have all left the farm and really none of them have that urge to come back into the practice, then everybody might be on a different page there.
Yeah, and you might be surprised. I mean, there's a lot of circumstances that I've been involved with where we think we know the kids don't want to come back. Oh, they've gone to college, they've got a great job, they're happy, they're in the city, they're doing what they want, but we better ask. Because some of these decisions are long-term decisions, and if we go down a path because we think we know the answer, we might be starting over a year or two from now when we share the kids what we're doing and share with them what we want, and they go, well, I would have really liked to come back to the farm, Dad, and we don't want to lose those opportunities.
And, it is surprising how many kids might change their mind and say, I wouldn't mind giving a shot.
Especially once they get in the real world and they start experiencing what it means to go to work for someone else and how the opportunities may be a little more limited than what they thought. And once they've been off the farm a little bit and had a chance to experience the real world, suddenly working for Dad or working with Dad may not seem quite as bad as it did when they were 19 or 20 and made that decision they were never coming back to the farm. A lot of growing up and maturing happens in that 20 to 25 year range. And so it's important if the kids are in that or a little beyond that we re-ask some of those questions because the answers may be very different than they were when they were 18 or 20. Family situations are different, and so they may be having a little different goals for the life than they did before.
And then it's kind of a power struggle once those kids do come back and they're working side by side with Dad, and then it's kind of, well, who's in charge? Who's actually the one that's running the operation? It
can be. You've got to set some clear boundaries and job descriptions, and that's where this starts becoming more of a business than just a hobby or just what Dad does, because we've got to redefine who does what when, and we've got to set some timetables for the kids. Here's when I want to be done so that you can start making these decisions. And a lot of times we'll say, if that's a 10-year horizon, what are some small things we can start the kids doing now so they still feel like they have control, they can implement some of their ideas, because they're going to have a ton of them. Mm-hmm. But give them some areas they can help with, they can feel responsible for, and at the same time, Dad can help coach them where they may be being too aggressive or not making good decisions or not thinking long-term enough.
And one of the big parts of this, and which is why you're here, is to help them, is with that financial aspect. Does the child or whoever is coming in to run the place, do they buy a little bit of farm? Do they buy a little bit of the machinery? Where do they fall in when it comes to the finances?
Yeah, and what entity structure Mom and Dad use today may be great for Mom and Dad running the farm today, but as that has changed, or as now that we know we're going to bring in some kids or bring in a kid, maybe we need to look at a different entity structure than just the sole proprietorship. And maybe there's some entity buckets that need to be created, and LLCs or S-Corps, or maybe a family partnership or a trust. And those are the things that you got to talk through and figure out what the long-term goals are. And you got to start the conversation.
And those can be, we've already talked that they can be difficult for emotional wise, but they're difficult just trying to comprehend it wise. We were talking a couple weeks ago, the difference between probates and estates, and you can get lost pretty easy.
Absolutely. You got to have some experts on your side.
And that's where you guys fit in with Intego Financial.
That's right. We help the farm client get ready for meetings, get ready for the discussions, have those discussions, bring different ideas to the table than maybe they've had or thought of, and try to help them get where they want to go.
So, Brian, when you first meet with a family, do you kind of draw out a roadmap and say, okay, we got a couple of different venues where we can go?
Absolutely. The first thing you start doing is figuring out what the family wants, because every family wants something different. Even if that means we want the farm to be farmed forever, what does that really mean? And so a lot of times it's about getting that long-term goal, not worrying about the specifics, just what's the goal? What's our values? What are the responsibilities that each person feels to the operation? Identifying those and really helping the family look at that long-term vision for the farm so that then we can create the right structure and the entities and the program to get them there.
And as you said, the important thing to do is get this conversation started so they have to call you. They could say, well, I'll wait till after spring, but we got time right now. It's rainy and wet.
It's a good time to do it. Our mind's still not 100% on planning. We're not cursing the weather every day just yet. So it's a good time to start that conversation and maybe get some ideas rolling around so when you do have some long hours in the tractor by yourself, you have a chance to think through some of these ideas.
So, Brian, what's your number out there at Intego?
507-874-3419.
Brian Hensley with us today with Intego Financial, and we're going to continue to talk to Brian every week here, talk about some of the things that producers and ag members or ag businesses need to be looking out for when it comes to planning. Brian, thank you very much.
Thank you.